Dr. Manville put this on the agenda just to keep you up to date on where we are. Um, At the next school committee meeting, we will provide, as promised, the FY11 preliminary budget. We'll be really ahead of schedule by that presentation, but it'll allow us more time to review it. The most important recent news is, as we reported by email recently, the Department of Education has informed us that we will receive ARRA IDEA money for FY11 in the amount of about $320,000. So that's wonderful news. Those were additional funds given to North Reading in FY10, and failure to receive them in FY11 would have made a major hole in our budget deliberations. It's still, we have to still realize that it's not recurring revenue, but the hope is that these funds plug the gap until the economy improves and those funds end up getting replaced, as they always were, with local or state funding. There is an important caveat to these funds, though, and that is that we get to see the criteria for how they can be spent. We certainly know that they are spent in the special education area. But in FY10, we were required to spend 50% of these funds on what was called reinvestment types of issues, meaning new program initiatives. Right. The intent this present year was to literally take the, in this case, $160,000 and spend it on new initiatives as a way to allow the district to move forward and to attempt new programming. And we've done so. The remaining 50% is in recovery areas, which means really to save layoffs, frankly. So should we continue to understand that that will be the criteria for FY11, it means that about half of the money helps us in the budget and the other half doesn't. It's not to say that's bad, but it would mean that it wouldn't provide an offset to existing expenditures, but rather give us an opportunity to do something new. But there has been nothing published on that yet, so I just thought it was important to asterisk this money.
But maybe, Kyle, we could continue to fund the new programs that we started this year.
That may be true.
Like this, I believe that SEAM program was one of the programs we brought into the district, correct?
Yes, it was.
So we may be able to say, look, we brought this program in, it's working well, let's continue to fund it, as well as the other, new programs we started, hopefully.
Let's hope so. There's certainly no shortage of good new ideas. Along with Dr. Manville, we had a discussion with Director of People Personnel Services to discuss possibilities. There's no shortage of ideas. But we're awaiting more information on that. And, like everything, it's still only January, but I don't imagine it's going to be forthcoming real quickly. So I suspect that we'll, in our budget deliberations, take the conservative view until we understand the full dimension of the issue.
By conservative, you mean putting 50% offset on
Well,
our
that would
budget?
we would certainly take direction from the committee on that.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation at this point.
Until we hear
That seems safe.
different.
Yeah.
I would think so.
So, there's also a funding of ARRA pre-K money for next year. That was between $12,000 and $13,000. So that helps as well.
Wow, what a magical
coincidental number that is.
The big one we still don't know about is the SFSF money, which was the fiscal stabilization money.
Right.
So, through the foresight of the committee, we did receive $700,000 this year, and we've held on to about $300,000 for next year. Most districts spent their full allotment in FY10, so more on that when we hear it.
But Carl, here's the question. I think we smartly kind of split that 700,000 plus up and said, let's hold some for next year. However, there's no guarantee that there's going to be money next year. So we may have taken that 700,000 and thought, this is a good idea, let's split it.
Yes.
But we don't know if we're going to get the second half of it next year,
Oh,
correct?
Yeah, we applied for it.
Yes, if I didn't explain that, I apologize. We are guaranteed to receive all $700,000.
Okay.
And by virtue of us not spending 300 of it, we just carry it forward.
Okay.
It's not a separate award. It was a singular award for
Right.
FY10.
What was unknown was whether we could do the carry forward, that was the
Right.
big.
Right.
So it's in our
mistake.
hands.
No, we haven't got paid a cent, right? We haven't gotten paid a
We still
cent
haven't,
from SF. It's only January though, so I wouldn't worry about it.
So, and I won't bother the
Don't worry
committee
about
with
it.
the horrible accounting issues we have at this point with the fact that we're spending money we don't have yet, and we have to move it all over later, yet at the same time, we do quarterly reports to the government, telling them what we do with the money they haven't given us yet.
See, we should have just had Carl speak during the RTPP discussion.
So,
Well, we appreciate it.
We're spending money we don't have, but we're pretty sure we're going to get it.
and we have to brag about it.
Right,
every
and we're
quarter.
telling them what we did with it. We hired people with money that you didn't give us. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. Okay. Well, that's great.
But they taxed me already. The
Right.
government already collected the tax money for the program.
Let me just add one thing to what Carl has said, and that is, we're working on a level services budget, and in FY '09, there is no small cap improvement in the budget. It did not go in. I'm sorry, in FY '10. So if you're doing a level service budget in FY '11, you don't have small cap. I've met with all the principals, and I'm meeting with the rest of the administrators to get a prioritized list of minimal small cap improvement. We're gonna keep that separate,
Yes.
because we're working level service, but there will be in existence, probably by the next time we meet, a list of what people want for their small cap improvement. So I don't want you to think we're just forgetting about it.
Thank you. That's a good catch.
Talking about that.
We got caught last year when we excluded small cap.
Right.
In the end, we needed 75,000 of the stimulus money
Books.
to get textbooks.
Yeah.
So we can't not consider those items.
So Carl, just to be clear, we have 320,000 that will go to ID, that will go to special ed in some form.
Yes,
We have 12,000 plus that goes to pre-K.
yes.
And then we have some 300-odd thousand that's left over from SF that we get to spend next year.
Yes.
So we're down probably about 100,000 or so in the SFSF, because I think we spent 400 something this year. So that's 100,000 that we're gonna have to make up. Okay,
But we don't know how much they're going to drop our chapter 70 money.
well, that we don't know,
To
right?
match what we are getting
What
from
will
other
be
sources.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We'll see how that happens later.
Do I sound cynical?
And circuit
A
breaker.
little.
But
But we get
and
it.
circuit breaker, right, circuit breaker dropped too, correct.
Well, what we do know is the 100,000 difference, a contractual obligation for our salary, and the bus contract will be some amount of an increase. So I already know that those amounts kind of skew our level services.
600 plus thousand we have to find to basically offer level services.
Okay.
Over last year's budget, over this year's budget, 600 plus thousand is really 100,000 difference in the
Right.
SFSF, 500,000 or so for our contractual obligations, and then whatever the bus contract. Those would be the major things, right?
Yeah, you understand, business managers don't like throwing around numbers so roundly
Yeah,
sometimes.
we saw you set up straight.
Yeah, we saw- yeah.
But it's certainly in that general neighborhood.
Yeah, I
And,
think we-
as we put the finishing touches on the budget, things pop up that we'll want to engage you in. Level services can be defined a lot of different ways, and we'll provide a document to the committee for that kind of review and investigation. We've suffered, or we've worked on significant cuts in some areas, 3 or 4 years running. And one of the first things that bounced back at us is revolving accounts. You use our reserves in the revolving accounts, and then the following year, you don't have those reserves anymore.
Right.
So there's other one-time revenues we use to balance FY10
Okay.
that start to
Okay.
bite you the following year.
Right.
So,
And then the selectmen also gave us, not gave us, I should make it sound, but they enabled us to use extra money to fill our budget gaps. And that's another, right, and that
From
might,
that mid-year cut.
that might not be,
well, yeah, of course, that would be more on the side of town's available revenues. It
Correct.
doesn't affect our budget at this
Correct.
stage.
Correct.
But your point's well taken, that the historical split between school and town spending in the second or third stage that we've seen from the town did not take into account that $269,000
Correct.
addition to the school budget that took place in late June last year.
Right.
We'll be meeting, I believe, on Friday morning.
Friday
again.
morning.
We may want to address that, because the 65-35 split shows us, I believe, with actually less money in the FY11 budget than we had in the FY10 budget,
It did.
given the available revenues.
Yes, it was like $100,000 to $200,000 reduction.
So I think in round numbers, that 600,000 is
Less-
probably more like
Like
800.
800, yeah. That Carl doesn't like round numbers, but
But we do,
we,
it helps. But this is all about good news,
Yes.
this budget report.
it was good news.
Well, one thing's for certain is we're not talking level funding.
No.
We're talking level services. Now, I know all of us have said that's our starting point, level funding just is not something we're gonna, but the finance committee has directed us to put together a level funding budget.
Correct.
So, more on that to come.
In
Yeah,
fairness-
take Carl's response. We're
in
meeting Friday
fairness,
morning.
The last snowstorm, the plowing was much better.
It was much less, wasn't it?
It was much less.
Yes.
They
In
have their
fact, my
street
wife
light.
almost said you broke it.
Cliff couldn't get out of his
About
driveway.
noontime. I wasn't out, but, and I had a phone call from one of our listeners who commented that I had broken it and that her street had not been plowed at all. That was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I noticed that I was chastised in the newspaper with a letter to the editor that says, you can really tell when you get to North Reading, the streets are actually plowed.
Right.
So, my comment in fairness is that plowing was much more appropriate this last storm. And it's appreciated from here, even though we're, I guess, exceeded the budget already.
Well, I did catch Cliff's speech on YouTube, so he's been immortalized in
Yes.
that way.
Yes, it's on YouTube.
You're on YouTube?
You're
Yep.
on YouTube.
I'm
Cliff's-
on YouTube.
Your speech is on YouTube.
Oh, good.
We moved into the new sanctuary.
Wow, Cliff.
So go to
Woohoo.
YouTube and Google your name.
I sent it to my folks.
Search your
because they
name.
have the same complaint.
Watch
They don't
out,
live
it's
here.
on YouTube. Google the name. Next item, Keith, the Mass School Building.
Yeah, there's really not that much to report. I did receive confirmation from Diane Sullivan, who works in Mr. Gill's office at MSBA, that the statements of interest had arrived by December 23rd, that they were all set and ready to go. And on January 4th, the missing statements of interest that had wandered through the postal system unidentified for weeks were returned. Which actually is a good thing, because now we have a complete set of SOI with original signatures on them in
That's
case we
awesome.
need them. I also got an email from Diane Sullivan, where she said she was trying to tie up some loose ends, and she sent some forms and also referenced the letter she sent to the Board of Selectmen on November 18th that she said was copied to the superintendent's office. I have not seen it, and neither has Mrs. Lundell. But the original, I put copies of the forms in the packet, and there's no deadline to get these forms back, so we're working on getting them completed and in. There are some blanks here probably that, especially in the first one there for the building committee, that have to be filled out, so we can get that in. And the second one, I think we can probably have signed on
It's just a
Friday.
standard.
It's just a statement
Yeah.
that the town administrator and myself have to sign, and we'll both be in the room on Friday, and we'll
Great.
get that done then.
One question on the school building committee form that we
Yeah.
have to fill out. I don't think our committee meets all the criteria of the different, I'm not sure, but I don't think, so I'm wondering if we're gonna have to restructure that committee.
I think we are, and
'Cause I don't know what
this is
some of
under
these
the
even
new
mean.
regulations. they want to have people with specific backgrounds?